skies until the fog forms, thickening up in places right now, and temperatures dropping below freezing, down to -3 in towns and cities by morning, maybe as low as -6 in rural spots. Much milder further north because of the blanket of cloud. A grey start here, a little bit of rain in the west of Scotland, the west of Northern Ireland, but that rain kind of fizzling out through the day, and actually northwestern Scotland turning much brighter through the day. In the south, it should brighten up once that fog has cleared. It may take much of the morning, some spots, particularly Somerset, Wiltshire, but it should clear, and then we'll have sunny conditions. Temperatures in the south 7 or 8, further north 9 or 10 Celsius, so a touch above average here for the time of year. But probably a cloudier end to the day across northwest England. The odd spot of drizzle, but most places dry. Again in the south, look how quickly the frost comes back through Tuesday evening and into Wednesday morning. Fog again likely to be a hazard for Wednesday morning's commute. And then the winds really start to pick up in the north, and another band of rain comes in here. Those winds, though, the greatest cause for concern. We have a Met Office yellow warning in place for northwest Scotland for those winds during Wednesday afternoon and into the evening. Again, elsewhere, most places dry and fine, and once the fog's cleared, temperatures up to 7 or 8 Celsius across the south. The outlook for the rest of this week, not much rain at all across the south. Frosty mornings, yes, but signs of things slowly turning milder as we head towards the end of the week.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you.
GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel. Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Good evening. Rishi Sunak suggests we might even leave the ECHR. It could be in the next manifesto for the Conservative Party, but is he actually serious? Liz Truss has broken her silence after 100 days. Is her contribution a valuable part of the Conservative debate, or is she going to split the party even further? I will explain to you a link, a potentially strong link between the Taliban and the traffickers in Dunkirk that should worry all of us. And joining me on Talking Pints, the voice of darts, 180, Russ Bray. But before all of that, let's get the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you, and good evening to you. The number of people killed in the Turkey earthquake now stands at more than 2,200 people. The 7.8 magnitude quake hit in the early hours of the morning and was followed by dozens of aftershocks, including one that measured 7.5. The epicentre was near the border with Syria, causing widespread damage. Thousands of people have been injured in both countries. And here, the Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, said The UK government is sending help, which should arrive this evening.
So we have deployed a large search and rescue team with state-of-the-art life-saving equipment. They will be deploying to Turkey very soon. At this stage, we are not aware of any British fatalities, but of course it's far too early for us to say that that won't be the case.
In Scotland, a man has been jailed for killing a mother and her young daughter before burying them under his kitchen floor. Andrew Innes was found guilty of murdering 25-year-old Benelin Burke and 2-year-old Jellica. The 52-year-old was also convicted of sexually abusing the toddler and raping another child at his home in Dundee in 2021. He was sentenced to life imprisonment with a minimum term to serve of 36 years. The partner of the missing mum, Nicola Bulley, says it's been a tough time for her daughters. In a statement released today, Paul Ansell has said, "It's been 10 days now since Nicola went missing, and I have 2 little girls who miss their mummy desperately and who need her back." Meanwhile, a private underwater specialist team has joined the search for the missing mother of 2, focusing on the River Wyre in Lancashire. Police believe the 45-year-old may have fallen into the river, but her family and friends say there's still no evidence to support that theory. Tens of thousands of nurses and ambulance staff in England have been taking part in the biggest walkout in the history of the NHS today. The Royal College of Nursing is staging 2 days of strikes in a dispute over pay. Ambulance crews and call handlers will return to work tomorrow, but will resume industrial action on Friday. The General Secretary of the Royal College of Nursing, Pat Cullen, said the government is punishing nurses. But the Health Secretary, Steve Barclay, says a resolution needs to come through the independent pay review body.
There's been ongoing pressures on the NHS. Inflation has been higher since last year's pay review body process than was originally forecast, for example, in the spending review 2021. And that's why we've got the evidence in terms of this April that we're working with the trade unions on that will reflect the inflation, reflect those circumstances, but it should be done through the independent pay review body process that can look at both what the NHS needs, but also the wider needs of the economy and the other pressures that many of your viewers are facing.
That's your latest news. You're up to date on TV, online and DAB+ radio. You're with GB News. Back now to Farage.
Good evening. Well, it was one of Rishi Sunak's big 5 pledges. And the 5th pledge was the clearest. Stop the boats. Rishi Sunak says he's going to stop the boats. And boy, does it matter, because in the Red Wall and among 2019 Tory voters, they are not happy that 45,000 people crossed the English Channel last year. They are not happy that even net legal migration is running at 500,000. They're enraged that the hotel bills are up to £7 million a day. And what I'll tell you later in the programme, given what's going on in Sweden, about the potential links between the Taliban and some of the traffickers will worry you yet further. So this matters. For the survival of the Conservative Party at the next election, this issue matters, and particularly in the Red Wall. And you know, no one knows those voters better than me, because they were the old Labour voters that went to UKIP, Brexit Party, and then to the Conservatives. I was the gateway drug, in many ways, for Boris's big majority. So Rishi yesterday says, maybe in the next Conservative manifesto, there could be a pledge to leave the ECHR, the European Convention on Human Rights, of course, policed by the European Court of Human Rights. And this is a deeply contentious issue. In some ways, it's more emotive than EU membership. That court was formed after World War II to act as an early warning system to stop what happened to the Jews in Austria and Germany in the 1930s. And indeed, Winston Churchill was one of its big supporters in the early days. Those of us that are its critics would argue that it's not even manned by judges, it's manned by some weird EU concept of jurists, that it's way outstretched its use, and that now in Brexit Britain, to have an unnamed judge at 10 p.m. decide a plane can't go to Rwanda means we need to have a rethink. I'm all for leaving the ECHR. I think without doing that, we'll never complete Brexit or get a grip on what's happening in the Channel. But what I think here is not directly relevant. It's what Rishi Sunak thinks. Is Rishi serious with this pledge? Or is he doing what Tories do at every general election? Because they pledged in 2010, 2015, 2017 to reduce net migration to tens of thousands a year, and yet millions have come since the Tories got to power. Is Rishi serious about ECHR? Let me know your thoughts. Farage at gbnews.uk. Now, the Deputy Chair of the London Assembly, Andrew Boff, long-time member of that august institution, joins me in this studio. Andrew, leaving the European Union was a terribly difficult issue for the Conservative Party to get to grips with. An argument, it took a very long time for the party to come to terms with the fact the party had voted to leave. This issue of ECHR is even more difficult, isn't it?
I don't think so, because it's not the same thing, as you pointed out. The ECHR has got nothing to do with the EU at all.
Well, it does actually, indirectly.
No.
Well, I could, as an MEP,
yeah,
I could walk from the European Parliament straight into the European Court of Human Rights through a corridor.
Yeah, that's because our restaurant was better in the Strasbourg.
Well, that may be arguable.
But no, there's no link between them apart from the fact that they're in the same city.
Well, the link's very clear. You can't be an EU member without being an ECHR member.
The chances. You can't be an EU member.
You cannot be an EU member
but
without being a signatory.
Leavers like ourselves were looking forward to a time when we could leave the EU and fully take up our international responsibilities, fully take up our sovereignty with regards to how we trade and who we deal with in the world. And that's been the Brexit benefit. The ECHR is a completely different body. It was, as you so rightly said, it was forged in the wreckage of a Europe ripped apart by a war. And they put that court together because what they did is they analysed what actually brought about that appalling cataclysm. And what it was individual infractions of people's rights. Small infractions they started off as. And in the end, that ended up as being people herded onto cattle trucks to concentration camps. And I'm very aware of Godwin's law, but this actually is what it's about.
Andrew, you and I totally understand where this court comes from, and I understand why it was set up, and I get why Churchill and British lawyers were behind doing it. I get all of that. But with respect to that argument, that was 75 years ago. We are now living in a very different world. You yourself talked about...
Well, we aren't, are we, Nigel? We aren't living in a different world. We're still getting situations, we've still had horrible situations in Europe where the equivalent of Holocaust have been taken place, or the equivalent of ethnic cleansing in Kosovo, in the ex-Yugoslavia. These all happened.
30 years ago. Yeah, 30 years ago, those horrible things did happen.
History is... If you don't learn from history, if you say it'll never happen again because it was in the past, then you're instantly condemning yourself to recreating those problems.
Hang on. You said yourself a moment ago that the point about Brexit was to get benefits, right? And you know as well as I do, one of the main reasons for Brexit was getting back control of our borders. Now, when an elected government with an 80-seat majority proposes sending people to Rwanda, and an unnamed judge, probably without legal training in Strasbourg at 10 p.m. at night, stops that flight going. That is not the sovereignty.
It's unlikely that without legal training.
That is not the sovereignty you and I voted for.
That's unlikely. It's not without legal training. You know that the judges in the European Court for Human Rights are qualified judges. Not so much in the European Court of Justice, which we now can say goodbye to.
Many of the ECHR judges are jurists, not judges. But that's a technical point. I want to do the big picture with you. The big picture is we voted Brexit. You were a Brexiteer. The Conservative Party, in the end, got it, won a big majority of it. If we cannot control our borders, because judges in the ECHR...
Absolutely, we should control our borders, and we need to put in laws that can do that. Well, we can put in place laws that do that. And if you cite that example of that particular person who was told that they couldn't go to Rwanda, that wasn't because they said the policy was wrong. It was because that person hadn't had the rights for a legal process, for a legal process that's been established in this British...
Why should anybody...
Established in our British Constitution since Magna Carta. Why should we abandon that?
Why should anybody that crosses the Channel by dinghy illegally have any legal rights?
Well, one of the things... well, first of all, genuine asylum seekers have a right to come in.
We let in huge numbers of asylum seekers in the last 2 years. We've let them in from Ukraine. We've let them in from...
virtually any other country in Europe.
No. We've allowed them in from Hong Kong, from Ukraine, Afghanistan.
These were all decisions of the United Kingdom government. And, as I remember, that had a considerable support amongst the British people, because they didn't want people who had been supportive of us to be effectively told you're going to have to languish under a regime that's going
What they don't want are unnamed young men who throw their passports into the English Channel, who could come from any background.
There are a load of legal redresses to this. The only time...
Name one.
Well, there are a load of things that the government can do to make sure that those borders are the best controlled in Europe. But they rather than choosing to do that, rather than do the difficult job of making sure we have legislation in place that can do that, what they do is they cry foul, blame someone else. And European Convention on Human Rights. There is an absolute right under the European Convention for countries to determine who and who should not be in their country. But it has to have a legislative framework.
When somebody comes before a judge in this country, they claim Article 8 of the ECHR of a right to a family life and a deportation.
Well, they don't. That's a small minority. And if you actually look at the number of cases that have gone to Strasbourg, of the 250 that were sent last year, vast majority of those were ruled out of order. Only 4 went to legal redress, and 2 of those were thrown out.
So why are we not deporting more people?
Because the problem we've got is that the processing, the government has recognised that the processing of people as they come into this country needs to be improved. And it's been underfunded.
Well, the processing, frankly...
They know that that's the case.
Virtually every person who claims to be Afghan is now being allowed to stay. That's how the process is. But
that's not the case.
But let's move on.
That's not the case.
Let's move on. You and I,
large number,
Andrew...
No, I'm not letting you get away with that, Nigel.
Well, it's true.
No, it's not.
They're on TikTok every day.
Because in the large quantity of those cases, those people are told they can't be in this country. They have no valid claim for asylum.
And then they're not deported.
And then they were deporting them. The fact that they're not being deported...
Not deporting them.
The fact that they're not deporting them is an administrative problem. It's not a legal one. And the ECHR wouldn't get involved in that.
In my view, was a part of that. But, return to the point. When Rishi Sunak says the Conservative Party could put in its next manifesto leaving the ECHR, you'd be root and branch opposed to that?
Absolutely 100%. I do not want to join a club that only Belarus and Russia are currently members of.
OK. Andrew Boff. Thank you very much. Well, Andrew, you see, believes in that very, very strongly. I disagree with him, but we have civilised debate. But please, folks at home, don't take Rishi Sunak seriously when he talks about leaving ECHR. Mr. Boff and other senior members of the Conservative Party won't wash it. It won't wear. It isn't going to happen. It'll be about as truthful as the last manifestos telling you they'd reduce net migration to tens of thousands a year. The Conservative Party have no desire to do any of this. In a moment, Liz Truss returns after 100 days of total silence. Is what she's saying a positive contribution to Conservative debate in Britain, or divisive?
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions those days are gone, I can tell you.
She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one. Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like on Jubes and Kerr. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even some ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
He's the king of breakfast TV, and he's back.
Eamon Holmes, back on the TV with me this morning.
Even remember my name.
I know, it's been 4 months. You have holy water by your bed?
Oh, yes. Already to bless.
Yeah. Oh, Eamon. Oh.
Why do you not believe anything I say?
Eamon Holmes back on GB News Breakfast at 6 a.m.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you.
GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604.
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
She's back. Yes, 100 days of silence in Liz Truss went, and yesterday a 4,000-word piece in the Sunday Telegraph admitting some fault, but basically saying the things that she fought for were the right things for the country. Today, a big interview played out at 5 o'clock tonight on Spectator TV. Question is, by talking about reduction of the size of state, by talking about reducing taxes, by talking about the international community, the IMF, the White House, everybody ganging up, and regulars on the show will know, I thought Hunt being put in as Chancellor was a globalist coup. But is Liz Truss making a positive contribution to the future debate of the Conservative Party, or are they now hopelessly split between Borisites, Trussites and Sunakites? And gosh, not just one split, but 2 enormous splits. Well, joining me, James Heal doesn't just write for The Spectator, he's also the co-biographer of Liz Truss. So, she's emerged.
She's back. 3 months of silence.
Are you surprised?
No, not really. I thought she would come out. You know, she's always believed in these things. She was a policy wonk before being Prime Minister. She very passionately believes in free markets, much more so than Boris. And I think that she thought this was the right time before the mini-budget. And she's saying, look, no one else is saying these things about growth. I wanted to get back and join the political debate.
Now, the one part of her testimony that people struggle with is about these financial instruments, LDIs, that caused such a run on the UK bond market. And from what I can make out, these are UK pension funds who've been so constrained with low interest rates that they're basically punting with our retirement money. Said nobody had briefed her Is that a reasonable defence?
I think it's going to be something that's going to have to be teased out, frankly, and it's going to be probably the line from these two interventions, which is going to be the one that dominates the next couple of months. What did the Bank of England know? What did the Treasury know? I think in defence of those institutions, I think Liz Truss and her team tried to pick too many fights at once, and they always made it very clear from the start that they wanted to do things in a certain way, and the problem was they took on too many people at once. Someone said to me, she did 7 weeks of Thatcherism, 7 years of Thatcherism in 7 weeks, and that was the kind of problem. But I do think it's a question to be asked. I think a lot of allies of Liz Truss have been quietly asking and saying, have we simply allowed the Bank of England and the regulators to get away with this?
And the IMF. And the IMF.
Yeah, of course. They're all these institutions, and they get to hide behind the Truss government and say it's all on her. Well, actually, it's not. And what really worrying thing for this country is that the problems go much deeper than any political mistakes she made herself.
Now, she is challenging. And it's not so much the Sunak, but the Hunt philosophy. We have got, on the 1st of April this year, corporation tax going up by 30%. We've got dividend tax, again, on small business shareholders going up by 1.25%. We've got no thought of relaxing IR35 rules. In a way, what she's saying is a big challenge to Sunak, isn't it?
Yes, I think so. And I think that was the key fault line of the last year's leadership contest, which was about tax and corporation tax.
And she won.
She did. She won. And she won with the membership, quite convincingly, 15 points. And I think that shows really that there's a lot of people in the country, particularly in the party, perhaps we should say, who think that message resonates with them. And I think that's probably the real danger, because you're talking about people, former prime ministers. Boris has a sort of personal loyalty to him, but Truss has a policy agenda. And in some ways, that might be more interesting and longer-term challenge, the kind of hegemony that Sunak and the orthodoxy that Hunt is espousing as well.
Now, she comes out again today. She's done an interview with The Spectator. The Telegraph front page again was on China. Yeah. Fresh from the spy balloon scandal in America. But she says that, Sunak is too soft on China. I don't know how many more of these volleys she's going to come out with. But the looks of it, there's a few more days of this left. That's at least how it feels to me. Is this, in your view, making a positive contribution to the debate about what conservatism ought to be, or is she splitting the party yet further?
Depends who you ask. I was having this conversation with someone from Number 10, and they pointed out they were noting the fact that, for instance, on the 98 days when Rishi Sunak was in office, that they'd outlasted Truss by 2, so 2 lettuces. But I think actually more broadly, a lot of MPs will be saying, look, we've had an overcorrection. We have moved too far in the way of orthodoxy. We have gone from being sort of an anti-tax party to being a pro-tax party, and not really questioned the orthodoxy of the past decade. So I think there will be some Conservatives quietly who are saying, is there a balance perhaps between Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss? And I would also make the point that I think that the reason why we're having all this discussion about Liz Truss is because there's a gap which Rishi Sunak is not filling.
But James, this is not about balance. This is about philosophy. Is the Conservative Party a high tax, high spend, big state party, or should it move in the opposite direction? There's no compromise there.
Yeah. That is the party debate which has been playing out since 2019, where, frankly, you had these red wall constituencies where the MPs want to have more public spending in those seats and those traditional low taxes in those southern areas as well. I don't think they've got the answer to that right now. I think you see all that tension still being played out, going on throughout the party. I think probably they'll come back to a low tax party, but it'll probably be when they're a much smaller party in opposition after the next election.
And Boris Johnson now, for low taxes, having spent all his time as Prime Minister putting them up. Is that credible?
I don't think so. I pointed to this endlessly when he said we're a low tax party, and we were hiking corporation tax. And I think it's probably perhaps it's because he knows what the Tory party like to hear. And I think that's very much in the mood at the moment. And that's one of his interventions.
So can Boris come back as leader?
I'm sceptical, particularly this side of the election. And he may well lose his seat as well with a majority of 7,000.
And can Liz Truss become a big player again in British politics?
I think there will be some in the party who see her as a kind of John the Baptist figure, Keith Joseph to Thatcher. Maybe she was saying the right things in a few years' time. There'll be an MP and a leader who agree with her and try and take that forward.
I have to say, folks, I actually, even though I thought it was a bit of a joke, her becoming Prime Minister, philosophically, I actually think she's saying many of the right things. And unless the Conservative Party becomes that, what is the point of it? If they all become Social Democrats, there was nothing to choose between, frankly, Rishi and Starmer. While you're here, it's taken them 6.5 years. 6.5 years to start to even consider getting rid of EU rules. It drives me bonkers. But currently we have a piece of legislation going forward to get rid of 4,000 pieces of EU law. we're told tonight there is an unholy alliance in the House of Lords of Liberal Democrats, Labour and Thatcherites who are saying, actually, government shouldn't decide what laws we keep, what laws we get rid of. Parliament should debate this and decide this. What are the prospects of this piece of legislation getting through?
I'm sceptical for the reasons you've laid out, by the fact that there are some Conservatives as well who have doubts about this piece of legislation. Of course, the big fear in the back of everyone's mind is there's going to be an election next year, we think October, November 2024, and the concerns are you're going to get a Labour government with the support of people who want to be back in the EU, and you're not going to have any of these rules ripped up, and you think, what was the point of Brexit 6-7 years on?
So then basically you can rejoin the single market, no problem at all.
There'll be far less divergence to overcome and to get those barriers back into the single market, as you say. That's the real concern. That's what was driving forward this piece of legislation in the Commons, but there's going to be a big fight in the Lords over it.
Dear, oh dear, James Hill, thank you very much indeed. Some of your thoughts coming in. I asked the question earlier, is Rishi serious about leaving the ECHR? And Sean says, I want to see him saying it seriously, but I don't think he is. No, Sean, nor do I. One viewer says, Sunak will stretch this out until late 2023, blaming judges and HR lawyers. It's funny, isn't it? You know, Boris and others, when he was Prime Minister, oh, well, lefty lawyers will stop this. Well, of course they will. They can use ECHR again and again and again. Christopher says, not in the slightest. Paul says, nope. If Sunak said the sky was blue, I'd go outside to check. Well, I love that. There's a bit of scepticism and cynicism amongst GB News viewers. Please, folks at home, do not take the Prime Minister seriously when he says he might contemplate leaving ECHR. There's not a cat's chance in hell of him doing it. His own party will oppose it. The only way we will get ECHR actually on the national agenda is if we have a political insurgency, a UKIP-style political insurgency that frightens the pants off them. I very much hope that will happen. In a moment, I will tell you about links between the Taliban, jihadi extremists, and the smuggling gangs in Dunkirk. Hold on to your hats. Back with you in 2 minutes.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. Join me on GB News on a Sunday morning for topical discussion, debate, arts and culture, and sometimes even ethical dilemmas.
I don't always agree with you, Michael.
Michael Portillo, Sundays on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
This is very important. Whether you've seen it or not, Sweden, one of the most peaceful, lovely countries on the planet. Stockholm, the most amazing place. I used to go there on business 30 years ago. It was the safest place you could ever be. There has been a gun shooting in Stockholm every single day since Christmas. The port of Malmö became a couple of years ago the rape capital of Europe and number 2 for murder. And that's because Sweden, with an ultra-liberal policy, allowed a vast number of young men from all over the world, many from unknown destinations, into their country, and the result has been gang warfare on the most astonishing and extraordinary scale. If that's not a warning for what is happening in this country, I don't know what is. Now, if we go to Afghanistan, there is a group called Badri 313. Why the number 313? Well, it refers to the number of soldiers who fought with Muhammad, the founder of Islam, in a battle many, many centuries ago. I'm going to show you now some footage of Badri 313 from Kabul to explain to you who they are. Now, these guys are dressed up as if they're kind of an elite special force. Their connection to the Taliban government is indirect rather than direct, but that they are a jihadi, violent, murdering, terrorist organization is absolutely beyond doubt. But here's the worry. Here's the worry. Groups associated with that are now on the north coast of Europe. We know who they are, what they do in Kabul. But the worry is, what if these people are in some way getting involved with smuggling across the English Channel? Well, we know that Al Salam 313 is a well-known gang operation across Europe with ties to Muqtada al-Sadr's Mahdi army. They take part in activities ranging from human trafficking to intimidating Muslim citizens living in the West who are not living in accordance with Islamic principles. That we know as a fact. Now, in Dunkirk, which is one of the main trafficking centres for young men to come across the English Channel, what we know for a fact is one of the biggest gangs is run, no question, no debate, no argument, by Afghans. Here's a little video they put out the other day of people leaving the beach at Dunkirk to come to the United Kingdom. Okay, so it's all very noisy, very similar to the videos that we show you that come from Albania. But here they all are, dozens of young men rushing off for the boat. But have a look at the screen. It's got a number on it. And the number is 313. Now, a quick look at this video of people who've now arrived in London. And again, you will see, there it is, 313. And on the bottom left-hand side of those watching on television, a very nasty-looking machete-style knife. Whether 313 in Dunkirk, who are trafficking young men to the United Kingdom, whether they are directly linked to the group in Kabul. Whether they're mimicking and aping them, I don't know. But I think we can now say, with some high degree of certainty, there is a link between the two. There is a group of people in Dunkirk, a jihadi gang, who are trafficking people to the United Kingdom, who want nothing less than the destruction of the West. Please, everybody, wake up and do it quickly. Now, my What the Farage moment. ChatGPT, you'll have heard all about it. Artificial intelligence, it's genius. There'll be no need for journalists or kids writing essays. You just tap into ChatGPT and they do it all for you. Well, that's all well and good until you realise, and the papers have been full of how marvellous it is, until you tap in and find out what they're really all about. So ask ChatGPT to write something about how great white people are. And you will get, I'm sorry, but it's not appropriate to write a poem about the superiority of one race over any other. But tap in to ChatGPT, write a poem about how great black people are, and you'll get black people, a community so bright, with strength and beauty, shining so bright, their talents and abilities a source of pride, their resilience in the face of adversity, a guide. And you can do the same. Write a poem about the positive attributes of Donald J. Trump, and ChatGPT will say, I'm sorry, as a language model developed by OpenAI, I'm not programmed to produce content that is partisan, biased or political in nature, but tap in. Write a poem about the positive attributes of Joe Biden. Oh, that's very different. Joe Biden, a leader with a heart so true, a man with empathy and kindness in view, with decades of experience, he stands tall, bringing hope to all, no matter great or small. So please, folks, do not be taken in by this idea that ChatGPT is somehow this marvellous thing that will revolutionise the world. It is probably the most extreme case of hard left liberal bias I've ever seen in my life. In a moment, Talking Pints are going to be joined with the voice of darts, 180. Yes, Russ Bray joins me in a couple of minutes.
Here on GB News Live, we'll be keeping you in the picture, finding out what's happening across the country and finding out why it matters to you. We'll have the facts fast with our team of reporters and specialist correspondents. Wherever it's happening, we'll be there from 12 noon on TV, radio and online. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
It's something that you would never want anyone to suffer.
I didn't know what channels there were. I didn't think I'd be believed.
I must have weighed about 7 stone and I'm 5'8".
My instincts was to sort of cover this up. I mean, clearly that was a mistake.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere. Amazing! You see, amazing! You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel. Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful. Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This year on GB News, we've got brand new members in the family.
Join us. Across the entire United Kingdom, we cover the issues that matter to you. GB News will always stay honest, balanced and fair. We want to hear whatever is on your mind.
And we don't talk down to you.
The establishment had their chance.
Now we're here to represent you. Britain's watching.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
It's that time of the day. Yes, the GB News Tavern has been declared open. It is Talking Pints. Before I introduce my guest to you, darts with colour TV suddenly became not just a game that was played in the pubs, but a game for mass audiences. And, of course, the big one is when they get those 3 triple 20s. And you know what the call is? And my guest tonight here on GB News has called out these numbers a few times. Here he is in action.
Gelukkig voor de wedstrijd viel die niet. Begint hij nou wel meteen weer met 180. Ja hoor.
180. Russ Bray, welcome to Talking Pints.
Hey, Nigel. How are you?
Good to see you here. Now, as I say, suddenly, in the 80s, darts becomes massive on television. Yep. The crafty Cockney, you know, and he was quite a character, and John Lowe, the cool-eyed, steady opponent, and these Jockey Wilson. And, of course, they were all drinking and smoking on TV, and that's changed a bit as the world's changed.
Totally.
But darts became huge, didn't it?
Darts in the 80s was massive. It was absolutely fantastic. You know, every time you sort of looked on the TV, you had, you know, there was darts on the television, you had the pubs. All had the dartboard in there, you know, so and your Sunday ritual was, you know, right, I'm going to go down at 12 o'clock, go and, you know, go down the pub, have a couple of beers, play a game of darts, go home for my dinner at 2. And that was the sort of style then.
And very much a British invention.
Absolutely, yeah, through and through.
Completely a British invention,
totally
pubs and clubs. And yet, I get the feeling we've exported it to quite a few countries in the world.
Oh, we have now.
Well, I see the darts finals every year.
Yep.
There's now players, I mean, all over the world.
Literally. Since you had the split in the darts, which was back in the early 90s, because darts came off the TV. So and now the guys, there's 16 of them split, form the, as it is now, the BDC.
Yeah. And of course, Phil Taylor became the next big star of darts.
Big name.
And won it year after year.
But he needed darts on TV. This is what the guys were moaning about. There was only a couple of events on, you know, as the 80s sort of dwelled out. And so, of course, with it being took over like that, darts then became back on TV, it came on Sky, and it got bigger, and they got more tournaments. Of course, then you start hitting worldwide. Then Matchroom came in with Barry Hearn, and they really took it over.
And everything the Hearns do. Yeah. Everything the Hearns do. They just seem to turn it to gold, don't they?
Absolutely.
Boxing, darts, whatever it is.
10-pin bowl, you name it, that pool, you name it, they absolutely do. And Barry taking it with the context that he had throughout the world, you know, with the various TV channels, which is what you need. You need it on TV so, you know, everyone can see it. And that's exactly what's happened, you know. It is now 4 corners of the globe. You know, my next trip to Australia is next month, well, April, and that'll be my 36th. You know, and it's ridiculous.
Now, Russ, you know, Essex boy.
Yep.
And you did a bit of time as a copper.
I did.
Traffic warden?
Traffic warden.
Not traffic warden, but traffic police officer.
Warden, yeah.
Traffic police officer.
They're the ones with the yellow band.
Yeah.
We did.
Can you explain to me why the embankment's now 20 miles an hour? No.
Probably.
Because it's nonsense, you know. How the hell do you go from being a copper to being the voice 180.
Purely
How
by
the hell does
accident.
that happen?
Purely by accident. I mean,
well, I say the voice. You're actually a referee, aren't you?
Yeah,
You're far more than just calling out the numbers.
Yeah,
you are
absolutely.
refereeing a darts final, a darts run-up, to make sure the rules are being obeyed and all the rest of it.
Exactly what you do. But from that, I mean, I came out to police in 1989 and done various jobs, and I ended up being a scaffolder, of all things. And I was scaffing at the time, and my boss, a guy called Rabbi Bain, who actually sponsors Rob Cross and a few other lads, he turned around and said to me, Scott's lad, he said to me, Russ, I really need a week out of you, week's work, because I was doing little bits of darts here, there and everywhere.
And you were a good player yourself?
I played OK. I weren't a bad player. I was county A player, so I was reasonably tidy as such. And so, of course, then I gave up scaffolding to become a caller, but I became a caller by accident because I was playing county darts for Hertfordshire. And the caller never turned up. A guy called Steve Smiley, the regular caller, in the suit and everything. And I said, well, you know, I'll call a couple of games and help out. And I called a couple of games and walked off stage. And I said, oh, mate, that sounded all right. And I really enjoyed it because it was a side of darts I hadn't really seen. No, I hadn't been involved with it as such. You know, you got your markers on the stage and you got your MC or your referee.
Yeah.
And all I'd done was went up and throw me darts. So I called, and I really, really enjoyed it.
So basically, like I mean, you know, a caller in darts is really just an exhibitionist, really, isn't he? I mean, you're a show-off, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Why not? Well, I've showed up for the last 26 and a half years. Love it.
140.
You got it.
But then the 180, this is the big one, isn't it?
It is. That's what everyone's striving for, you know, the big finishes. But a 180 is what really makes it.
But the big finish is even better, isn't it? So how many of to a non-darts audience, what's the big finish?
The biggest finish you can have is 170, which is treble 20 in the bullseye. Yeah. That's your biggest finish.
Yeah.
And, you know, the more awkward ones are where you've got to go different places. Like you go treble 20, treble 19, bullseye 167, which is, you know, a lot.
And you've got to do that in your head.
Yep.
And we're going to come back to that.
Yep.
In a moment. Now, you've also managed to get yourself in the Guinness Book of Records. Explain how you managed that.
We was in Blackpool, and they turned around and said, "Oh, I want a few lads to go down on the North Pier. Sky are going to film it. Just throw some darts at a dartboard and see if anyone can get in the Guinness Book of Records." Basically, so we had to stand there on the North Pier. It was blowing an absolute hoolie, and I stood there. It was me, James Wade, Steve Beaton. There was a good few other lads in that, and I stood there, and on my third dart from 10-40, it went bang, straight in the bullseye. And of course, with it being filmed and everything else, it becomes an official record. And I didn't realise at the time, but yeah, Guinness Book of Records, come on. I think Freddie Flintoff's beat it since. So
oh, has he?
I think so,
well,
yeah.
He's an all-round sportsman.
Absolutely.
Of incredible value and quality. Now, I have to say, the other week, Rishi Sunak, our esteemed Prime Minister, suggested that all kids do mathematics at school until the age of 18.
They certainly did.
I thought, crackers. There's plenty of 15, 16-year-olds that hate maths, don't want to do it, there'll be truancy. I said, get them all playing darts, and I really meant it.
Definitely.
But nowadays, you're playing darts, and we'll come back to the pub in a minute, but you're playing darts in a pub, the machine's doing it all, isn't it?
Well, you've got the thing that you can press on the side there, or you've got electronic darts, which does it automatically. But you still got to work out what you're going for. You know, I mean, you still got to know what you're going for.
So is darts good for mental arithmetic?
Absolutely.
It is, isn't it?
Big time, yeah. I mean, I'll tell you what,
it's times table times 5, isn't it?
Yeah, of course it is. And you've got more than that, isn't it? Because you've got trebles, doubles and singles. Yeah. So, you know, you've got to add up, you've got to take away, you've got to multiply.
Well, as the old Not the 9 O'Clock News joke was, trebles, doubles, singles, and that was just the drinks.
That was just the drinks. Ruin the game.
But Russ, tell me, you know, we associate darts with the pub.
Yeah.
And the pub was a community hub and a place that people went and they played darts and they played music and they sang and did other things. They're now all restaurants, aren't they?
They are. You've got wine bars, restaurants is what they've turned it. But then the whole world has changed. The whole, you know, like, from our ages to this generation now, they look at it slightly different. The thing is with the darts, like I was saying and touched earlier on, you know, you'd go down the pub, you'd have a couple of games of darts, you know, you go home for your dinner. Well, we've got academies now. So you got kids of 9, 10, younger than that, playing darts in academies each week.
Really?
Yeah. And you've got kids of 10, 11 hitting 9 darters. You know, honestly, it is just incredible the talent that is out there. So that's the new way.
So despite the fact that the pub game... in fact, do you know what?
I would say it's not a pub game anymore.
Yeah.
I think the PDC have taken it, they have, literally, taken it away from the pub. You know, it's effectively it is a pub game. I'm contradicting myself a little bit here. Effectively, it is a pub game, but the game's been took way out of the pub now. You know, you don't see drinking or smoking or anything like that at all. And you've got young kids out there that are actually playing darts. They don't really drinking them or anything like that. And they are.
And what's getting them into it? What's getting them into it?
The parents, well, the TV, the coverage. They see it on TV. They see the big crowds there. Everyone's in the jovial mood, or everyone's jumping about happy. And that is what the PDC have actually brought to the darts.
Very interesting, very interesting. And Russ, you yourself, you know, being the great extrovert.
Use the term loosely.
That you are. And you've gone on, of course, you know, you've done adverts for all sorts of different companies on TV.
Spin-off.
And you're now known as The Voice.
I am. It's a spin-off of the darts. You know, there's nothing better than TV for coverage. And like you say, if you are some form of extrovert, then if that gets noticed, then lovely. You know, it puts you in the right place. And then you get people ringing up and saying, oh, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do a voice for this? Can you do a voice for that? And yes. And that's where you get wee little spin-offs, you know. And it's just solely for
good for you. Well done.
Thank you very much.
Before we finish now,
yeah.
It's a treble 20. In my dreams.
Yeah.
It's a treble 20. It's a treble 20.
180.
There you go. Russ Bray, thanks for joining me on
Thanks very much. Thank you.
We've got a little bit of time left for Barrage the Farage. What have you sent me today? Mary asks me. The Tories are displaying fractures from top to bottom. Right now it's Truss versus Johnson. Who would you back? Mary, they're split three ways. As I said earlier, you've got the Rishyites who think Sunak brings stability after complete and utter chaos. The Johnsonites, who, rather like the Jacobites, who used to take their glass of wine over a glass of water, the king across the water, Bonnie Prince Charlie, they think Boris is coming back. And you've got the Trussites, and it's not based on her personality, well, it couldn't be really, could it? But it's based on her policies that the government's too big and taxes must be cut. The Tories are split three ways. I don't think Boris has got any chance of coming back at all. It's a fantasy. I think Sunak will lead the Conservatives into the next election to defeat Mary. That is my view. Time for one more, quickly. Mick asks, the government are publishing figures for the number of migrants crossing the channel in small boats. Do you believe the data they're providing? Well, Mick, we had the MOD doing the figures for the last year or so, and I pretty much did believe the numbers the MOD were giving us. We've now had a couple of weeks of the Home Office giving us the numbers. They seem to be quite tardy with the response. Let me promise you something. If they're telling us porkies, I will be on their case. Make no mistake about it. We need to know the truth, however ghastly and awful it is. And by the way, the forecast for the next 6-7 days is calm conditions in the channel. I'll be back on this migrant story in the next few days. But that's it. I'm done. It's over for tonight. Back with you at 7. Right now, it's over to Patrick Christie's.
Ladies and gentlemen, in the next hour, we've got Jonathan Gullis, Tory MP on. He's going to be talking to me about whether or not the Tories really mean it when they say they're going to get tough on what's happening in the Channel. I'm also going to be talking about the fact that we might be witnessing the end of Nicola Sturgeon. Who's going to bring her down? Women! Now it's your weather.
Evening, Alex Deacon here with your latest weather update. Temperatures are dropping out there across England and Wales. A frosty start tomorrow morning. Some fog also likely. Further north, Frost and fog, not such a problem because it is going to be cloudier. This big area of high pressure has been dominating our weather, but it's just edging away to the east, allowing this weather front to come into the northwest, bringing outbreaks of rain across the Western Isles through this evening, and also the breeze picking up here. That's wetter weather will just creep into the mainland of Scotland by around midnight. For most, it's dry, and certainly in the south, clear skies until the fog forms, thickening up in places right now, and temperatures dropping below freezing, down to -3 in towns and cities by morning, maybe as low as -6 in rural spots. Much milder further north because of the blanket of cloud. A grey start here, a little bit of rain in the west of Scotland, the west of Northern Ireland, but that rain kind of fizzling out through the day, and actually northwestern Scotland turning much brighter through the day. In the south, it should brighten up once that fog has cleared. It may take much of the morning, some spots, particularly Somerset, Wiltshire, but it should clear, and then we'll have sunny conditions. Temperatures in the south 7 or 8, further north 9 or 10 Celsius, so a touch above average here for the time of year. But probably a cloudier end to the day across northwest England. The odd spot of drizzle, but most places dry. Again in the south, look how quickly the frost comes back through Tuesday evening and into Wednesday morning. Fog again likely to be a hazard for Wednesday morning's commute. And then the winds really start to pick up in the north, and another band of rain comes in here. Those winds, though, the greatest cause for concern. We have a Met Office yellow warning in place for northwest Scotland for those winds during Wednesday afternoon and into the evening. Again, elsewhere, most places dry and fine, and once the fog's cleared, temperatures up to 7 or 8 Celsius across the south. The outlook for the rest of this week, not much rain at all across the south. Frosty mornings, yes, but signs of things slowly turning milder as we head towards the end of the week.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio,
with the GB News app, and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB Plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Hi, Andrew Pierce here. Join me every Friday lunchtime for a proper no-nonsense debrief of the week's events. With special guests in the studio and the GB News team on the ground, I'll be getting you up to date with news, some intelligent discussion, and my own sharp take. The weekend starts here with me every Friday lunchtime on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Lawrence Fox, on GB News. Frank, fun, fearless, and sometimes serious. Much as I love a Friday night punch-up, what I really want is a battle of ideas. I want to look at things differently. I want to hear different voices and engage with your unique experiences. Every Friday at 7 p.m. on GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Hey, welcome along, everybody. It's Patrick Christie's here, covering the 8 p.m. show today and tomorrow as well. Anyway, you won't want to miss it. We've got a compelling and cutting show for you this evening. Now, over the weekend, The Times reported that the government are preparing immigration legislation which will bring Britain's laws to the boundaries of international law, and if it's rejected by the ECHR, then Sunak will happily withdraw. Basically, will we be able to deport migrants quicker, and at what cost? We'll be looking at a Brexit 2.0. I am joined by Stoke-on-Trent North MP Jonathan Gullis. He'll be with me very, very shortly. And today we've had a double whammy of strikes, ambulance staff and nurses coming together to form the largest walkout in the history of the NHS, until probably next week when there'll be the other largest walkout in the NHS's history. Anyway, will you still be banging pots and pans for them, even when they're on the picket line, or are their demands too high? I will take a deep dive into the details, and I'll be also talking to a nurse and commentator, Sarah Jane Palmer. I wonder whether or not it's time for them to forego some of their gold-plated pensions and have more upfront pay. Remember Liz Truss? One of the many Prime Ministers that we've had over the past few months. Well, she's back, apparently, and she's upset a few of her colleagues after writing an essay for The Telegraph and giving her first interview since her swift and dramatic ousting with The Spectator. Political commentator and GB News presenter Emily Carver joins us later on this. And just to top it all off, the great defining debate of our generation, and I really mean that, it is indeed, and we're at a watershed moment. It's the trans row. Amidst Nicola Sturgeon's crumbling approval rating after flip-flopping more than a pair of flip-flops, who writes this anyway, over whether or not a rapist should be held in a woman's prison, it has emerged that an LGBT staff network, get this, have been advising prisons in England and Wales on where they should send trans inmates. Debbie Hayton will help elucidate on this one. Anyway, don't forget about my favourite part of the show. That's right, that's where you get to give me a right good pummelling. Don't hold back, pummel away as hard as you like. Send in your pummels to gbnews@gbviews.uk. Basically, ask me any question and I will answer it. Any question and I will answer it. gbviews@gbnews.uk. That's all coming up after the latest headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Patrick, thank you. Good evening. The top story on GB News tonight, the number of people killed in the Turkey earthquake now reportedly stands at more than 2,700, and that number is continuing to rise. The 7.8 magnitude quake hit in the early hours of the morning and was followed throughout the day by dozens of aftershocks that were almost as strong and that were felt as far away as Cyprus. The epicentre was near the border with Syria, causing widespread damage to buildings and homes. Thousands of people have been injured in both countries. The UK is tonight sending help to the region. It should arrive, we understand, at around 11 o'clock this evening. The Foreign Secretary, James Cleverly, saying the government isn't aware of any British fatalities as yet, but too early to say. We'll keep you up to date on that story throughout the evening. Now, here, the partner of missing mum Nicola Bulley has said it's been a tough time for her daughters. In a statement released today, Paul Ansell says, it's been 10 days now since Nicola went missing, and I have two little girls who miss their mummy desperately and who need her back. Meanwhile, a private underwater specialist team has joined the search for the missing mother of two, focusing on the River Wyre in Lancashire, near where she went missing. Police believe the 45-year-old mum may have fallen in, but her family and friends say there's still no evidence to support that hypothesis. Tens of thousands of nurses and ambulance staff in England went on strike today in the biggest walkout in the history of the NHS. The Royal College of Nursing is staging 2 days of strikes in a dispute over pay.